Everybody knows that SmackDown is the cooler of WWE's two main brands, right? It's the underdog, it's historically seen as the show with better work rates, and most importantly, it's the color blue. Like the ocean. Surfers like the ocean, surfers are cool. Therefore, SmackDown is the cooler brand. Hold your questions until the end, please. And even though it has a less rich history than its older brother, SmackDown still has an identity of its own. It was there through the glory days of the late Attitude Era, and like Raw, it pulled in some huge numbers around this time, especially compared to, you know, today's ratings. We've already looked at Raw's biggest rating, and check that video out if you haven't already, it's just wonderful. So now it's time to step back in time, give ourselves some Michael Cole frosted tips, and relive the glory days of the blue brand. I'm Adam Pacitti from Cultaholic.com, and these are the 10 highest rated SmackDown episodes ever. Join us. Number 10, November the 11th, 1999, 5.1. Our first entry happened during the build to Survivor Series 99, where top heel Triple H would be defending the title against both The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin. Except that's not what happened, because Austin got ran over in the car park and was replaced by The Big Show. Hooray! Nobody was to know that on this episode of SmackDown, however. The main event saw a recently reunited DX take on Vince McMahon's brave babyface boys. The team consisted of The Rock, Kane, Test, and Shane O'Mac. A heroic and handsome bunch, we're sure you'll agree. They also won the match as Test and Rock put away Triple H with the help of Special Enforcer Steve Austin and guest commentator Arnold Schwarzenegger. Wait, what? That's right, a big selling point of this episode was the appearance of Arnie, who was plugging his upcoming movie End of Days. End of Days is a supernatural action horror film where he plays a character named Jericho Kane. Unfortunately, we're still waiting on the planned sequel where Sylvester Stallone plays a brave demon slayer called Midian Gilbert, but let us dream. Arnie was awarded a replica title belt on the show before decking Triple H in the aftermath of the main event, all in a day's work for the last action hero. This episode also gave us one of the most infamous segments of the entire Attitude Era, as Big Boss Man decided to crash the funeral of Big Show's father. What an episode. Eventful? Yes. Good? Number 9, February 10th, 2000, 5.2. Only a couple of months into the new millennium and the WWE locker room was descending into all-out war. On one side, Triple H, backed up by his fellow DX members and the newly heel Radicals. On the other side, The Rock, Mick Foley, Too Cool, Rikishi, and the heartbroken Kane. Tori had recently left him for X-Pac, a questionable decision come the end of this episode. The two loose factions faced each other in 5 matches over the course of the night. Perry Saturn and Dean Malenko both scored wins over those cheeky Too Cool boys, but Rock and Foley beat the New Age Outlaws in a tag match, and Rikishi leveled the score with a DQ victory over Chris Benoit. So it all came down to the main event, Kane taking on both X-Pac and Triple H in a handicap match. And Kane did it! He heroically won the damn thing by DQ when Big Paul hit him with a chair 5 minutes in. Kane then tombstoned Tori, otherwise known around this time as That Jezebel. Thanks, JR. Kane was red hot around this time, which certainly helped matters. Another popular act was newcomer Kurt Angle, who won his first title in the company with a win over Val Venus in the opening match. Elsewhere, Bubba Ray Dudley continued his weird fascination with putting women through tables, the victim this time being EMT and occasional diva BB. She would go on to feature in the new Star Wars trilogy though, so good for her. Number 8, April 20th, 2000, 5.2. The big rating for this episode is probably down to one thing in particular. This came in the aftermath of Chris Jericho's Phantom title win from Triple H, which happened on the previous Raw. It remains one of the most effective bait and switches in WWE history, and we know that's true because we still wish Jericho had actually won the damn thing. Perhaps to make up for being made to look like a silly goose on Raw, this SmackDown featured lots and lots of Triple H. The episode was part of the build to Backlash 2000, where Austin would help The Rock defeat the game, so he was really milking the last days of his title reign here. Crucially, this show also took place in Philadelphia, always the home of a raucous live crowd. ECW hero Taz challenged Triple H in a non-title champion versus champion match, which sounds confusing, so we'll explain it now. Taz had recently made a shock return to his old promotion to take the ECW championship from Mike Awesome, who was on his way to WCW. This led to a unique scenario where we had the ECW champion taking on the WWE champion, despite Taz being contracted to the WWE anyway. And of Of course, Triple H was very giving in this one, allowing Taz to take him to a 5-star time limit draw, earning Match of the Year acclaim across the board. No, not really. Before the match, Triple H promised to prove to the world that ECW sucks, and he did, beating Taz in just 5 minutes. The main event saw a lumberjack match between two of Hunter's biggest babyface rivals, The Rock and Chris Jericho. A lot of the show was dedicated to short backstage skits where Triple H and Stephanie would recruit various heels to be lumberjacks in the match. Predictably, this led to a boatload of interference come the main event, with Triple H blasting Rocky with the title belt to hand Chris Jericho a hollow victory. Don't worry guys, The Rock would get his revenge in 10 days at Backlash. Other highlights here include the shocking breakup of everyone's favourite tag team, D'Lo Brown and The Godfather, as well as not one but 2 dance-offs between Rikishi and The Big Show. Charming stuff. Oh, and Bubba put another member of the women's roster through a table, this time Lita. What's he bloody like? Number 7, March 30th, 2000, 5.3. Let's rewind a few weeks now and look at the go-home show for WrestleMania 2000. This was the prelude to an undeniably stacked Mania, with the big fatal 4-way main event, the now legendary Triangle Ladder match, and Test and Albert vs. Head Cheese. But this SmackDown is a difficult one to rate in terms of quality, because a whole lot happened without anything really changing. The big payoffs were obviously being saved for WrestleMania. So instead of anything truly meaningful, we had Triple H and Foley cutting promos on each other, the Hardys costing Edge and Christian a match, a lot of that sort of thing. Oh, also, Val Venus was seen being seduced by both the Cat and Terry Runnels at different points in the night because he was set to be special guest referee for their Mania match. A match which turned out to be the only singles match on the entire pay-per-view, and boy did it steal the show. It didn't. In non-title action, Rock beat Eurocontinental champion Kurt Angle fairly easily, one of those rare matches where a non-finish would have probably been the best course of action. Afterwards, we were treated to a brawl between 3 of the 4 Mania main eventers, with Big Show and Shane standing tall at the end. Which, as we all know, is booking code meaning show is definitely not winning at the pay-per-view. So a lot of filler is our summary of this SmackDown. But one thing of real note that did happen was a title change as Stephanie McMahon became women's champion in the main event. So spare a thought for Jacqueline losing her belt to a non-wrestler in under a minute thanks to interference from Tori. Sad, really. Number 6, May the 4th, 2000, 5.3. Zipping forward a few weeks, we find ourselves at the first SmackDown after Rock's big Backlash title win. The McMahon-Helmsley regime stacked the deck against him on this show, making him defend the title in a 3-on-2 handicap match against Triple H, X-Pac, and Road Dogg. Wait, I thought The Rock was supposed to be the one with the odds stacked against him here. Poor Triple H had to drag his mid-card mates along with him. Hilarious jokes aside, the odds were indeed weighted against The Rock, as his partner was none other than Earl Hebner, and the belt would change hands if either man was beaten. On the whole, the show had a very hot start and finish, with a lot of filler in between. Chris Jericho kicked things off at 100 miles an hour, beating Benoit to become the new IC champion. He cheated and hit him with the belt because this was the Attitude Era, and babyfaces just did that sort of thing, you know? The main event was what you'll find if you look up sports entertainment in the dictionary. A ludicrous stipulation, a whole lot of interference, and a ton of post-match shenanigans to top it all off. Despite just about the entire McMahon-Helmsley faction trying to get involved, Rock and Earl Hebner managed to hang in there long enough for Jericho to show up and attack Triple H. With a chaotic brawl erupting all over the ringside area, Hebner low-blowed X-Pac inside the ring, allowing the champ to hit a rock bottom and win the damn match. Rock and Earl retired their tag team with a 100% winning record, but there's always next year's WrestleMania. But the action was far from over, as a furious Triple H pedigreed poor Earl on a steel chair and led a beatdown of The Rock, only for a ragtag bunch of lovable babyfaces to save the day. Charging down to the ring were Jericho, Rikishi, Big Show, and the Dudleys. Upper mid-carders, assemble! This led to a big happy house show ending, with the Stooges being dragged into the ring, Patterson given a stink face, and Briscoe put through a table. One of them drew the short straw here, I'm just not sure which. Number 5, January 20th, 2000, 5.4. Dust off your Huey Lewis records, we're about to go back in time, baby! Look, you get the point, okay? We're having to jump back and forth because these shows aren't in chronological order. You understand that by now, surely. This SmackDown was the go-home show for the excellent 2000 Royal Rumble. And so, as tradition dictates, this SmackDown had a fake mini-rumble to get everybody excited. It took the form of a triple threat over-the-top match between the 3 favourites for the Rumble itself, Rock, Big Show, and Kane. Kane won, and with momentum in his corner, how on earth could he lose at the pay-per-view. Actually, it was The Rock who ended up winning, although his feet hit first and Big Show was screwed. We will never let that slide. The other big segment of the night was a war of words between Triple H and Mick Foley, which Foley won in convincing fashion. The pair then had a huge brawl, which Foley also won, pile-driving Triple H on the announce table and smashing him in the head with a steel chair. No thumbtacks yet though, that would have to wait till Sunday. But that wasn't the only wild brawl of the night, as elsewhere on the show, Matt and Jeff Hardy got the better of the Dudleys, putting them through a pair of tables. They then beat them at the Rumble 2, which disproves our point about Big Show earlier. Strange. Other parts of the show were dedicated to building the Rumble match itself, with Viscera squashing Crash Holly to establish himself as a threat in the match, and X-Pac beating Test to earn the number 30 spot. Triple H claimed that this would make Waltman the favourite to win the thing, which is perhaps the least cerebral thing he's ever said. Number 4, January 27th, 2000, 5.4. Now, in a happy coincidence, the next SmackDown on our list was also the next one in real life, the first episode to air after the 2000 Royal Rumble. Love was very much in the air on this show, just a couple of weeks away from Valentine's Day, and we were treated with not one, but 2 romance angles. Pro wrestling always handles this stuff with sensitivity and intelligence, so we're sure it all went fine. First of all, Tori turned on Kane and left him for X-Pac, a betrayal reminiscent of a certain biblical figure. The name doesn't spring to mind right now, but we'll let you know if it does. Back to reality now, where Mae Young and Mark Henry announced that they were expecting a child. We all know how this one ended up. Badly. Moving swiftly on to the main event, which saw The Rock take on Rikishi in a clash of 2 babyfaces, only for Triple H and Big Show to ruin the match and stand tall. Show was angry because he felt that he'd won the Royal Rumble, and Triple H was there because he enjoys beating other people in pretend fighty fights. We then got perhaps the most depressing SmackDown ending ever, with 2 Cool running in to make the save, and Show and Triple H just easily beating them down. At least let Scotty hit the worm on somebody, for the love of God. Number 3, April 27th, 2000, 5.4. Back to April now, and the go-home show for Backlash 2000. This episode was all about setting up Rock's attempt to win the title from Triple H, with a returning Steve Austin in his corner. The Rattlesnake had been out since the previous year's Survivor Series, but Rock guaranteed that he would be making a special pre-Backlash appearance tonight. That was probably a factor in the high rating here, and also a revelation that caused Vince's very gifable gulp reaction. He's so silly, isn't he? The overall mood of this show was one of paranoia, as Triple H and co ran around backstage trying to find Austin. There were various shenanigans, like attacking an innocent person who looked a bit like him, discovering a rattlesnake in a bag, receiving a 316 message on their pager, and so on. A pager? Wow. Austin's appearance was, of course, saved until the end of the show, and turned out to be one of his iconic moments of anarchy as he destroyed the DX Express. Aside from that, we saw 2 title changes on the night. Malenko beat Scotty 2 Hotty to win back the light heavyweight title, and a rare early clash between Matt and Jeff Hardy saw the Hardcore Championship at stake. Crash Holly won the match, obviously. Oh, and Bubba Ray was back to his old tricks, the cheeky monkey, but he was actually thwarted this time as Test and Albert saved Trish Stratus from disaster. Number 2, April 29th, 1999, 5.8. Now we reach the first ever episode of SmackDown. Vince may have been easily winning the ratings war by this point, but he was keen to really crush WCW while they were on the ropes. He piled on the pressure by introducing a second show to compete with Thunder, and so SmackDown was born. You might have noticed, however, that this show has red ring ropes, which is just weird, isn't it? Well, there's a reason for that. This was more of a pilot episode, and the first proper SmackDown wouldn't come along for a few more months. This original test run occurred the week after Backlash 99, and the WWE landscape was changing rapidly. A few days earlier, Raw had given us a newly babyface Rock, as well as Austin saving Stephanie from The Undertaker. Shane McMahon was the big bad leader of the corporation, having kicked Vince out for, get this, being old. This was in 1999, it's now 2020, just let that sink in. SmackDown's first ever match saw Val Venus defeated by the Blue Blazer, aka Owen Hart. It's a poignant piece of the Blue brand's history, and a sad reminder of just how versatile Owen was, able to mix it up with anybody on the card. Shortly after that, we saw a piece of Russo-era history, as Shane and Taker joined forces to form the Corporate Ministry. The formation of this super stable led to a main event tag team match, pitting Austin and Rock against Triple H and The Phenom. That is one hell of a main event on paper. Unfortunately, it ended in DQ, with the Corporate Ministry rushing out to attack Austin. But never fear, Austin fans, because Test, Big Show, and Ken Shamrock ran out to even the odds. Soon after this, they'd formed the Union, looking to take it to the corporate ministry. Go on, lads, you can do it. They didn't last very long. Not very long at all. Hey, not the only time a union's been snuffed out in WWE history, is it? Hey, go on. Anyway, back to the brawl, which mostly spilled out of the ring, leaving a weakened Austin alone with Undertaker. But it was Vince McMahon to the rescue? The boss charged to ringside, decking Shane and distracting Taker, only to be nailed with a horrible chair shot for his troubles. Austin then stunned the dead man and Shane before enjoying a few beers to end a very chaotic segment. There's not a lot else to report here, really. As mentioned, we were firmly in Russo country at this point, which meant lots of short bouts and a variety of screwy finishes. There was at least a fairly straightforward title defense for X-Pac and Kane though, defeating those damn New Age outlaws. Number 1, January 6th, 2000, 5.8. So here we go, the highest rated SmackDown of all time. And you know what? Unless Vince books Rock and Conor McGregor versus Justin Bieber and God next week, I'm not sure we'll be seeing it beaten anytime soon. This episode came off the back of a high-stakes Raw, which saw Triple H beat Big Show to win his 3rd WWE Championship. The biggest match of this episode saw The Rock take on an undefeated Kurt Angle, only for an interfering Steve Blackman to ruin things. Angle won by DQ and, of course, celebrated like he'd found a little bag of sweeties in his mum's handbag. So Rock and Angle didn't really live up to the hype, but thankfully it wasn't part of the overarching story of the show. Instead, this episode's theme saw Triple H and co having a bit of a bad time of it, really. X-Pac was destroyed by Big Show, Billy Gunn lost a handicap match to the Acolytes, Road Dogg lost to Kane, and Triple H struggled against a randomly selected challenger in the main event. That man turned out to be Rikishi, who really gave as good as he got, even kicking out of a huge steel chair shot toward the end. A disbelieving Triple H then hit him with the title belt in full view of the referee, and yet another match ended by DQ. The game tried to do a post-match beatdown, but Rikishi wouldn't actually stay beaten down, forcing Triple H to back off like a coward. Rikishi's pals ran down, and we had a big Too Cool dance party to end the show. Hooray! And honestly, what better way to end this list as well? I certainly can't think of anything. Now, where are my sunglasses?